It's hard to follow a phenomenal performance. It's actually a performance, and I'm just here to give you advice. But it's going to be the best advice you've ever heard because it's the best advice I ever heard. So I'm paying it forward, sharing advice that I've learned from mentors, so I'm ready to get started. But first thing, 2, housekeeping. 1, can we just take a selfie? Can you guys smile? Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. I'm tweeting it. Oh, okay. Lights are up. All right. And the second thing is, I'm going to transition slides, because I want to make sure this is fast and we're engaged. Every time I say clap, I want you all to clap, and we're going to transition through slides that way, okay? So I say clap, and you go? Okay. All right, so I am excited to be here with Crest. I didn't really know how to be a brand ambassador, but I used to be really into whitening my teeth in high school. And anyway, so the whole theme is about, sponsored by Crest, about being happy, healthy, and hired. And I think these are really important, and I can personally share that these are very important themes because I mentioned to you that I created my role at Google, which means that I had to start something from scratch. I had to prove the value of my work. I had to get people to be on board with it, find mentors who don't look like me, find sponsors and advocates. And so I had to make sure of a few things. So here's a few things that I think about. How do we stay happy, healthy, and hired? So the first one I mentioned earlier, surrounding yourself with people who fuel and inspire you. I mentioned that average. A bunch of you were tweeting that. It's something that I always think about, how I can deliberately curate the people who are around me. And related to that is so important to just stay centered in who you are and being authentically yourself, and even just remembering where you're from and the things that matter to you, because the values that our family instill in us are at that center. The third point, and I'm going to go into each of these a bit more, but the third one is about choosing happiness, because happiness is a choice, and we can all create that choice every single day. And like I said, when you're starting something and you're committing yourself to it and you're trying to be as alive as possible in the work that you're doing, sometimes that can lead to burnout. And I will tell you what that means to me, but it's something very real that if you're not in your career yet, can happen. And it's important that we openly talk about that and how to either sometimes avoid it, although it can not be a bad thing, you can learn from it, or how to recover from it and build yourself up again. I mentioned the importance of finding sponsors and advisors, but finding partners is so important. The people who are like-minded with you, who are going to have your back, is so key. And in that, not only people who are your peers, but also supporting others. Finding those people, how can you proactively find people to mentor yourself? Because you get so much out of that. And the last is about being inspired and finding people who, maybe you met some of them tonight, or you will meet them tomorrow, people who just make you think bigger and want to do more. So the first, I'm going to tell this through people, through kind of snapshots of people in my life who reflect each of these different points. This is my center. This is my mom and my sister. I mentioned my mom was the first generation to go to college, and she actually is a high school teacher now, and she's super into education, but she would never walk at graduation. She didn't walk after high school. She didn't walk after college, and my abuelita didn't even know if she graduated college. You kind of need a degree to be a teacher, but she was like, ¿Te graduaste? Like, what happened? We don't know. So this is actually at my cousin's graduation, and I was like, Mom, can we put a hat on you, your cap? Because we need to celebrate the fact that you pursued an education and accomplished that. And that was so important to me, to always remember how hard they've worked. You know, Janet mentioned earlier that her daughter will be second generation. And I love when people say they hope that their children will know where they came from and they'll have the hustle that they did. Because in college, a lot of people didn't understand why I was still a part of this community. And they said, you didn't go through the struggle like we did. You're not first generation. And they tried to almost like cut me out. And I thought, no, because it is so real to me, because my mom and my dad made sure that I knew how hard they struggled and how hard my grandparents struggled. And for that reason, I need to continue to do this work and continue to aim higher and make sure that my kids know what it's like to have gone through what they did. And so finding that center is so important, because sometimes I get caught up with work. And this is right now, like work is crazy right now. And I texted my parents, and I'm like, what are you guys doing this weekend? And they live in Southern California. I live in the Bay. And they're like, I don't know. And I said, well, I might come home. And they're like, Mija, please come. And I told them, I just need to be home. And I need my mom's caldo de pollo. And I just need to like be in my bed and have my papi tell me everything's going to be okay. And things are good, but you just need to remember that center, right? And that's part of maintaining your fuel and your happiness. So I mentioned that my parents mentored me, and then later in life I found other mentors outside of my family. And the people in this deck are mostly, or these slides are mostly Latinos and or Latinas. But like I said, sometimes it's really interesting to meet Latinas who are different than you. I love that we're all connected, but this is one of my favorite Boricuas. My friend and life coach, Gina Rudan. So not everyone can have a life coach. I was fortunate enough to be able to hire her formally, and that meant finding someone who inspired me and is a professional coach, right? So this was her job. Eventually, she liked Google so much, we hired her, and now she's at Google, and now we're just friends. But, but she came into my life because I told her, I need to find more balance in my life. I was really into my work, and I thought, I actually just need to meet someone who's been through some of the challenges I have, and she actually led Multicultural at Avon and PR Newswire, and so she didn't know the tech world and the challenges I was going through or the opportunities that I was living day to day, but she definitely knew what it was like to advocate for support and attention to an audience that other people aren't as familiar with. So I thought we were going to work together on a very professional level relationship, and she, in our first day of coaching, she's like, tell me your life story. And it like made me catch my breath. How many people have actually asked you for your story? Like, go, tell me your life story. You don't have to tell me now. He's like, he got nervous. But I actually hadn't had anyone just ask me for the full story. Like, start to finish, tell me the whole thing. Normally, it's little sound bites and little snippets. And so it was like the floodgates are open. I started telling her of my family and my schooling and all these different things in my life. And she discovered that the one thing that I really needed to work on was rediscovering or reintroducing myself to my inner child. And so that has to do a lot with happiness, right? That I was a professional mindset at like 12, and I never slowed down to just be a kid. And I love to go out, I love to dance, but it was always for everyone else. Like I had fun dancing, but it was more like my friends expect me here, or my partner expects me here for work, or whatever. But I love to bake, and I love to paint, and I wasn't doing the things that I did when I was a kid. And so we had this hashtag Eli the Kid. Every time I did something that was like painting or reading on a weekend, on a Saturday night, and like I would have never done that. I'd be at a club or whatever, doing something fun. And instead I was choosing to do things for me, and that was really important. Because along the way, I had met someone named Emma Carrasco, who I mentioned was one of my mentors, and she's now the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of National Public Radio, NPR. So most people don't even know that they have a CMO or that she's a Latina, and she's amazing. And so Emma came into my life, I mentioned during this process of developing this like Latina, not just a conference, but this whole Latina initiative at Harvard. And Emma became, I call her Tia now because we're so close, but she was the person in my life who warned me that, not that I was working too hard, because Gina was telling me to like have some balance. Emma was the person who told me, burnout will happen to you, and you need to know how to get yourself out of it. Because it happened to her, and she said, I burnt out, and I left my work, and I went and did yoga in India for 2 years, and that may not be what you do, but you need to find, you're laughing, right? Like, she literally pieced out, and she's like, I'm done, I'm gonna go stretch in downward dog in like, New Delhi. And I think that sounds awesome, but she warned me, and she's like, it's just gonna happen, and don't be afraid of it. And so I reached burnout in my work. And not because I was working too hard or hours were too long. I was literally just pushing myself so hard because I so believe in the work that I do that I was just, like, my body was telling me no. Like, my mind is telling me yes, body's telling me no. Okay, some of you got the music reference. So I didn't want to be too dramatic with that, but anyway. So that's when I said, you know what, I need to take a pause. I told my manager I need some time off. And I went to Paris, and I baked macarons, and that's all I'd wanted to do for years, and it was amazing. And I'm not saying that you have to leave the country and go bake and practice your French from high school. That may not exist anymore. But again, it's that not being afraid of failing, and it wasn't a failure in my work, but I almost felt like I'd failed myself. Like, my parents, do they get I want to take 6 weeks off of work? I have enough vacation time to do it, but they're like, are you okay? Is my boss going to think I'm about to quit? Like, I had all these concerns about everybody else, and realized just to silence them and to embrace that I needed some time for me, and that was okay. And when I mentioned the reason why I'm so committed to the work I do, it's because of the people that allow me to work with them. And one of the people who has been a huge part of my life is, her name's Adriana. Some of you are Mexican descent, so I know it's not a pan-Latina word, I'm hoping it'll be, but how many of you know the word chingona? Oh my God, a lot of you. Okay, so she's I would say my chingona in crime at Google. A chingona for Mexicanas means a badass Latina. Like, if you're a chingona, that means you're hustling and you're just audacious and you're passionate and you're powerful. And I actually wrote a poem about what it means to me to be a chingona. And she's one of the people who inspired me to write that, because when I wanted to start the work I'm doing now at Google, there were a few people who just didn't understand it, who just didn't get it. And I felt like, why does this have to be so hard? Why can't I just have everyone on board? And I remember there was a moment when someone approached me at an event, and they basically told me, like, don't pitch this to so many leaders. Like, don't, whatever. And they're no longer at the company, you don't have to worry about them. But in that moment, I felt so shut down. And I was like, I'm just tired of having to force something to happen. And she's the one who reminded me, she's like, don't let them get them down. You know what you're doing. And so since that moment, and we always think back to that moment in the parking lot when she had my back. And she's like, you know what you need to do, and I'm here to help you. Tell me the plan, let's go do it. And so that to me was so important because there's been moments, and even this week I had a situation, I emailed her and I said, hey, I was like, pray for me, things are a little hectic right now. And she's like, I got your back, don't worry about it. So finding that person who has not only your interests, but also something special about Adriana is we have very different skill sets, completely different. My life coach, Gina, once sat down with us and we were thinking about the strategy for the year. And she said, okay, you both get 10 minutes, draw it out, what's the plan for the year, what's the vision, go. And so I start drawing like murals, I draw a whole picture of the United States and like moments that are happening, and like every moment of the year I see as like a vision of either a picture or a story. I'm more of a storyteller. I look at Adriana and I'm shocked. She has a spreadsheet, like she by hand made a spreadsheet. And that to me looks like the hardest thing to even think about. And she looks at mine and she's like, did you just like paint something? Like she didn't even get it. And so that was really cool because, you know, we have each other's back, that's awesome, but allowing ourselves to think that we can have the exact, by the way, what we drew was the exact same thing. We were totally on the same page, but we had our own such completely different ways of expressing it, of doing it, that it was one of those moments where like there's people out there with complementary skill sets who on the surface might look totally different or might not even relate, but if your values are aligned and the vision makes sense, you can really do a lot together. And so someone who's in the audience is also in this presentation, Diana Garcia. So I mentioned I started these initiatives with Adriana, and through that was able to meet the Diana Garcia, who inspires me every single day. Because she actually, you know, shout out to Cress, all about smiling. She was drawn to my smile at an event. I'm kidding. That's what she told me. You can ask her later. So she came up to me, she was an intern at Google, and she was like, I want you to mentor me. She was like, everyone else, get out of the way. She wanted to connect, and by chance, we're both from Oxnard, or she had spent some time living there. And so she pursued me, and I was like, wow, that's awesome. It feels kind of flattering. But as soon as I met her, you know, I put here support and fuel. Her role, like, I'm technically her manager, and I always get embarrassed when she tells people, she's my boss, and I'm like, we're friends, and I hope that I can always work with people who is my friend, you know, like that we have each other. And that not only is she there to support me, but I support her as much as I can. I hope I do a good job. But she's someone who fuels me so much because her energy and her spark is so genuine. Like, doesn't she look like the funnest person in the world? And she took this selfie right before I had to go on stage at this Hispanic marketing forum we had at Google. And it was the first time I was sharing a lot of hard data. Like all numbers, and in front of an audience that thinks they know everything. And so I'm here to like try to impress them with some numbers. And I'd practice, and I was like super nervous about it, but, and also a couple of my other naysayers were in the crowd. And I was like, I need to prove them wrong. And anyway, so all this is going on in my head. And and I like, one of my contacts messed up, so I'm like half blind, literally half blind. And so she like went back to the room because my dad sent me my contacts, and it's like all hectic. And she took a moment to slow down, and she just took the selfie and sent it to me. And that just made everything better. And I was like, this is why Diana's in my life, because even if I'm half blind and I forget half the numbers and the slides might not even work, I at least know that I have a friend in Diana and she's there for me. So thank you, Diana. And one of the things to connect Diana to someone who I admire, how many of you know who Dulce Candy is? Yay, so Dulce Candy is an influencer on YouTube. And Dulce Candy happens to be Mexican, happens to be from Oxnard. We all somehow found each other. Well, Dulce Candy is an influencer because she has a YouTube channel, she has beauty content, and she does all this awesome stuff. And so I always admired her, and I always thought, wow, that's so cool. I'd love to start a YouTube channel. Totally makes me nervous. I haven't done it. When Diane asked, what can we do about changing the portrayal of Latinas in the media, I was going to say that. I was going to say, you should all start YouTube channels when I was sitting right here. And then I thought, I can't say that because I haven't even done it. And I keep saying I should, and I haven't. Well, Diana, going back to that last person in my life, she is the one reason I started recording content this week. If it weren't for her telling me, you can do this, you have a story to tell, and people always say that. Some of you came up to me and you were like, your words meant so much, but I leave here and I forget that. Right? Like, it's kind of like what Janet said, like, never say you're good, you have to keep trying. Well, sometimes I think maybe my story is not good. Maybe, why am I on this stage right now? Who knows? Like, I hope this means something to some of you. And Diana's the one who tells, thank you for the yes, it does. And Diana's the person who tells me, you can do it. If Dulce posts videos of herself, like selfie mode in the parking lot with her kid in the back seat, and people still watch it, you can do this too. But anyway, so I think that like inspiration is a combination of people who fuel you and remind you and encourage you. Again, I'm like, shout out to Janet, I keep hyping you up, of encouraging each other and finding that person who's gonna support you. And then finding someone like Lisa. So eventually I met her, and she's like, oh my God, you should start this channel. And she was a normal, down-to-earth person. But I don't see her every day. Like, I get to see Diana most days. But she's someone that I remember that I want to keep in my average of people, that, that level, right? That average of people in my life. Because it's her content that's reaching 2 million subscribers every day. And if I had a message to share here, I'm like literally testing myself. If I have a message to share on this stage, maybe I should start a YouTube channel and share it with more. And my first taste of that, of like me overcoming my own fears, there's a quote I love. It says, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. It's like scary to even say that, because I'm like, there's so many things I'm afraid of, and I need to just get over it. And so I once spoke at an event, and it's called Latinas Think Big, and it's all about Latinas empowering each other and supporting each other. This is my last point in case anyone's checking time. And so I had to give opening remarks, and I said, I think it's amazing that we get together to think big and support each other, but we don't talk about what happens when we go home. Like I said, when you're like, oh, can I still do this? My girls aren't around me anymore. I'm nervous. Does this even make sense? And I said, one of the things that I'm afraid of is sharing my writing. I would love to blog, and I once wrote a poem that is my definition of what it means to be chingona. And so I said, kind of to honor this idea that we should get over our fears, I'm going to read my definition of what it means to be a chingona. And so I read it out loud, and people like this, they're like tweeting me the things that they liked, and they're like, yes, girl, they're yelling, and some people are crying, and so it was just cool to have them moved that way. And I actually I still, to this day, have not shared it on my Facebook. I've shared it on my Twitter account, but because sometimes you're more afraid of the people who know you well than the masses. Like, I can talk to you and probably keep going all day until they shut me off, but I'm more uncomfortable with, like, what's my mom gonna think? She doesn't really like that I say chingona, but I'm trying to, like, empower myself, and people out there saying that I wrote words that describe the feelings that they've never known how to articulate because it's such a unique experience. It's living fabulosa. We can all say it here, but when you leave this room, how many people really get what it means to be living fabulosa and be smart and ambitious and have insecurities and have a family and values? Like, we're such complex, nuanced people that it can be a little scary to go out and say, I know what that experience is like. And so that's where I am, thinking about how I can overcome my own fears and take moments like this where I'm reflecting on the fact that here I'm sharing with you. And if we're about being happy, healthy, and hired, that's what it comes down to, right? Is making sure you're happy, making sure that you're overcoming your fears, and that knowing in the work setting, in your professional life, in finding mentors, that it's about overcoming that doubt and finding people like the Dianas. And there's 2 other people in the audience I want to give a shout out to. Bianca Caban, I mentioned, we started this Latina movement at Harvard. And another friend of mine is Tanya. And Tanya, a few minutes ago, I finally told her about my interest in creating a YouTube channel, and she's like, why didn't you tell me? I would have told you to do it a long time ago. And I said, I know, because I knew the second I told you, it'd be so real that now I have to do it. And so now she's here telling me to do this. And so the reason I'm sharing this of like a personal fear of mine, the challenges I've had, the ways I've tried to overcome them, is to hopefully make you know that you're not alone in this. And a lot of us go through similar experiences, and we're all unique, and no story will ever be the same. All of us are going to have a different story to tell. But in the end, it's settings like this, it's the friend next to you, it's the tweet you send me that I'm going to favorite and retweet right now, that helps us stay connected and empowered. So I hope that you leave this event feeling orgullosa about everything that embodies you, your passions, your fears, your values, and let's go do more.